This video contains brief discussions of assisted suicide. While the topic is not explored in detail, some viewers may still find the subject matter upsetting. Viewer discretion is advised. In the latest episode of Strange New Worlds, they tackled a question that's been on every Star Trek fan's mind at some point. What is Starfleet really? I went in expecting a straightforward answer, but what we got was a surprisingly emotional, thought-provoking journey that reminded me why I fell in love with Star Trek in the first place. This story will challenge how you see Starfleet, and by the end, I was not just entertained, I was genuinely moved. It's one of those episodes that makes you feel proud to be a Trekkie, whilst also making you question some of your own assumptions. And trust me, there's one moment here that hits really hard on an ethical level, but I'll get to that a bit later. So, if you're ready, let's open hailing frequencies and dive right in. Red Alert! We need to go to Red Alert because this video contains spoilers for Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 3 Episode 7, What is Starfleet? You've been warned. Now, in this review I'm going to break down what I felt was good about the episode, what I thought was not so good, and then I'll share a batshit crazy theory about where the season might take us next. Sound good? Well, before we get into it, here's my question of the week for you. Do you think that Starfleet is a military organisation or something entirely different? I really want to know where you stand on this, so let me know your answer in the comments below. Alright, let's quickly recap what is Starfleet, and I'm assuming you have seen it. Lieutenant Ortegas' brother, Batel, is aboard the Enterprise to film a documentary about Starfleet. But it's pretty clear he has an agenda. Batel is very aggressive in his questioning of the crew, pushing a narrative that paints Starfleet in a negative light. Eventually, Uhura confronts him and basically suggests that he's using this documentary to work through some personal issues. She points out that Batel might be blaming Starfleet for his estranged relationship with Erica, Ortegas, and that deep down he's feeling guilty for not being there for his sister after she was injured by the Gorn. Batel doesn't take that well at first, but it sets the stage for what's to come. Meanwhile, the Enterprise has orders to transport a creature called the Jikaru into a war zone on behalf of the Lutani, a species outside the Federation. Almost immediately, the mission goes sideways. The ship comes under attack, which allows the Jikaru to break free from containment. The crew tries everything to recapture it, but this creature is massive, dangerous, and terrified. Spock attempts to communicate with it telepathically to try and calm it down, and that gamble ends up with Spock in a coma. Not good. Then comes the big revelation. The Enterprise discovers that the Lutani have been artificially altering the Jikaru, essentially turning this poor creature into a living weapon. It's in constant pain and lashes out because it's suffering. Uhura finally manages to reach the Jikaru on a deeper level, think along the lines of a Vulcan mind meld type of thing, and learns that the creature is basically begging for release from its agony. In a heart-wrenching decision, the crew decides to honour the Jikaru's request. They lure the creature into a nearby star, allowing it to end its life and its pain on its own terms. Afterwards, the Federation steps in and quarantines the Jikaru's homeworld to protect the rest of its species from ever being exploited again. And witnessing all of this gives Batel a major change in perspective. By the end of the episode, he's so moved by what he's seen, the compassion and the principle of the crew, that he ends up creating a documentary that praises Starfleet and its people instead of tearing them down. Now, I have to talk about something I predicted in an earlier video. I had this theory that the show's tone in Season 3 would keep flipping back and forth between heavy, serious episodes and lighter, whimsical ones. Clearly, I was wrong. This is actually the third heavy, emotionally intense story in a row. So much for my tonal rollercoaster idea. Consider that theory utterly debunked. However, I did predict that this episode would turn out to be uplifting and affirmative by the end, and on that point I was right on the money. Despite all the darkness and moral dilemmas, the story ultimately leaves you with a hopeful, feel-good impression. I really appreciated that, especially after how bleak parts of it were. So hey, I'll take half a win on my predictions. Alright, let's get into what I thought was good in What Is Starfleet. First off, I love that this episode directly addresses an age-old debate amongst fans. Is Starfleet a military? Now this question has been around forever, and seeing the show shine a spotlight on it was fantastic. They literally had the characters debate Starfleet's true nature on screen, and that's bold, and I'm here for it. Plus, the way they framed it through Beto's documentary was really clever. Watching the crew from an outsider's perspective, with Beto almost playing the role of a critical fan or a skeptical journalist, was a refreshing storytelling advice. It added a meta layer to the episode that made me think about how Starfleet might look to an average person in that universe, not just to us fans who always see Starfleet as the heroes. I also have to praise the story itself. The central moral dilemma, helping the Lutani in a war effort versus protecting an innocent creature from torture and exploitation, is pure Star Trek. This felt like a classic Trek scenario where our heroes have to decide between following orders or doing what's right. The fact that it turned into a debate about euthanasia and mercy was a bold move, and I think they handled it with a lot of sensitivity. When the Jikaru asked to end its life, it was a heavy moment, but it was treated with compassion and respect by the story. It's not an easy topic to tackle, but Strange New Worlds didn't shy away from it. Emotionally, it really paid off. I was honestly stunned and moved when the crew granted the Jikaru's request. It was tragic, yes, but it was also kind of beautiful in the context of the episode. And on a lighter note, I have to say, any episode that puts the spotlight on Erica Ortegas is a win in my book. Melissa Navia's performance, as always, was outstanding. She's always great, but here we get to see Ortega struggle and persevere on a very personal level. Knowing the personal tragedy that Melissa went through in real life not that long ago, it's hard not to feel emotional watching her bring those authentic feelings to Ortegas' character. I had a lump in my throat seeing Erica confrontational with her brother and then come out the other side with their bond strengthened. It was heartfelt and it was uplifting. Definitely one of the episode's high points for me. But of course, no episode is perfect, so let's get into the bad, or rather, the less good. But first, I just want to be absolutely clear. Overall, I think this episode was excellent. It's easily in my top 3 of the season, maybe even of the whole series so far. The critiques I have are relatively small in comparison, so with that in mind, the biggest issue that stuck out to me is an implication in the story that I found a bit troubling. It seems like Starfleet Command actually knew about the Lutani's immoral experiment on the Jikaru, that they were aware this livestock wasn't just some animal, but a sentient being tortured and turned into a weapon. And yet they still sent the Enterprise to deliver it. Now that might have been an oversight, or just Beto spinning it that way, but the episode never clearly says otherwise. And if Starfleet really did know, that would be completely against everything Starfleet stands for. For an episode literally titled What Is Starfleet, implying that Starfleet would knowingly participate in something so unethical, felt like a misstep. I wish they'd included a line or a scene to make it crystal clear that Starfleet had no idea what the Lutani were up to, and that Captain Pike was just thrown into this terrible situation blind. Then his decision to save the creature would have been Starfleet's true colours shining through. Without that clarification, there's this nagging feeling that Starfleet brass were kind of complicit in a torture scheme, and that doesn't sit right with me at all. The only other negative for me ties back to that Is Starfleet a military debate. Don't get me wrong, I'm thrilled they addressed it, as I mentioned earlier, but at one point, one of the characters, I'm pretty sure it was Dr. Mbenga, directly refers to Starfleet as a military. And I groaned when I heard that. Look, I know reasonable people can see it differently. Starfleet does have a militaristic side. They have ranks, starships with big phaser banks. They fight when they have to. But I've always seen Starfleet as something more than just a military. It's an exploratory and scientific body, a peacekeeping armada, as Picard once put it. Yes, it's got military capabilities, but it's not a militaristic organisation, at least for me. I've always loved the ambiguity, though, that Starfleet can be the topic of debate amongst fans. So hearing a Star Trek show label Starfleet as military outright, that was disappointing to me. It felt like the writers left it in as an error, but it creates a stance on something I'd rather stay open to interpretation. To be fair, that's a personal gripe. Not everyone will care about that line, but if you're like me and you prefer Starfleet to be seen as not quite a military, you probably cringed a bit at that moment too. I kind of wish they'd avoided nailing it down in dialogue and left the debate just as that, a debate. Headcanon should always win. Anyway, those issues aside, this episode still blew me away. And you might be thinking, okay, great, it was a strong standalone story, but did it actually move the season arc forward at all? Well, on the surface, it doesn't seem like it. This felt like a self-contained episodic adventure. But, and here goes the fun part, I suspect the writers slipped in a setup for something bigger. It's time, of course, for this week's batshit crazy theory, and it ties back to something I've been theorising about for a while now. So, long-time viewers will know I've been harping on about Captain Batel and her whole Gorn infection situation. I've jokingly called her a Weirgorn, a hybrid like a werewolf but with Gorn DNA, ever since she got infected. I have a feeling that Batel is being set up to make a huge tragic sacrifice by the end of this season, and this episode actually reinforces that hunch for me. Remember the Vesda life form from a couple of episodes ago? That creepy alien threat lurking out there? I'm still convinced that's going to come back as the big bad, and I think Batel, struggling with the Gorn monster inside her, might be the key to stopping it. So here's my theory. By introducing the idea of a compassionate euthanasia in What Is Starfleet, the show is preparing us, and perhaps Pike, for the possibility that Batel might choose to end her own life to save everyone from the Vesda, or to prevent her Gorn side from harming others. In other words, Pike might have to do for Batel what he just did for the Jikaru, help someone he cares about find a merciful end for the greater good. I know it's dark and heartbreaking to think about. I hope it doesn't come to that because it would devastate poor Pike, and not to mention us viewers. But can't you kind of see the parallel? Batel is essentially a ticking time bomb with that Gorn infection, and the Vesda is an existential threat. If she's the only one who can stop it, it would tragically make sense for her to go out on her own terms, just like the Jikaru did. Again, this is a wild theory. I'm putting my tinfoil hat on here. I could be totally wrong, and part of me wants to be because I do like Batel. But I have to ask, what do you think? Am I crazy? Or could you envisage a scenario where Pike has to make that kind of impossible choice with Batel? Let me know if you're getting the same vibes, or if I've just heard the phrase, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one, too many times. Alright, what's my take on What Is Starfleet? Alright, that's my take on What Is Starfleet. If you enjoyed this review, please do me a huge favour and hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And I'd absolutely love to hear your thoughts on this episode down in the comments. Did you agree with my points? Did something totally different stand out to you? And don't forget to answer that question of the week: is Starfleet a military or not, in your opinion? I'm really curious to see what you think on that one. Also, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to Hailing Frequencies so you don't miss next week's review of Strange New Worlds Episode 8. It's 4.5 Vulcans, and from the teaser trailer we got, oh boy, it seems like an eternity ago, it looks like we're finally getting a more light-hearted comedic adventure. I think it's safe to say that one's going to be a lot more whimsical than what we've had lately, and honestly, I'm excited for a bit of comic relief after all this drama. So make sure you subscribe and ring that notification bell to join me for the next review. And as always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. There's a new documentary series coming about the various bridge crew members of starships. They've just finished filming the pilot.